I used to work at a gas station. Weird things show up around 2 a.m. All right, let me just try to recall this as best as I can. It happened a while back, and I try not to think about it more than I have to. For starters, I used to work in a gas station, but the title made that obvious enough, I guess. It wasn't a place in the middle of the city, but it wasn't way out in the countryside either. It was one of those awkward in-between areas where mostly it's just low-end houses, fast food joints, and gas stations like the one that hired me. The station was on a 2-lane road that wasn't far from a major highway, and we got a lot of people stopping in for gas who were on their way to the beach for the weekend or just passing through on their way to the cities around us. Typical of any gas station like the one I worked at, if I do say so myself. But you see, that was during normal hours. Once the sun went down, oh, that was when the fun really started. That was when all the freaks showed up. Late at night, all the shadier customers would show their repulsive faces. Drunks would stumble through the doors and keep on going right for the back wall, where we kept all the alcohol. Teenagers would slink in trying to buy cigarettes. I'd ID all of them, and some of the cards they showed me looked fake, some didn't. To be honest with you, I didn't really care. If they wanted to wreck their health, it was their business. Potheads would wander in too and load up on chips and ice cream. Oh God, the ones who would buy ice cream were a funny bunch. More often than not, they'd ask for a spoon with their ice cream, and we only had the crappy plastic kind. I had one idiot stand there for 20 minutes trying to scoop the desert into his mouth with one of those bendy spoons. One time, a guy shoplifted the store right in front of me around midnight. Then he walked outside, called the cops on himself, and just stood there in the parking area, waiting for them to show up. I had followed him outside and I asked him what his deal was. He looked at me and said that he just wanted a place to sleep for the night. I hadn't expected that, but I told him that if he wanted to sell the story, then he should keep running. That he did, he walked off the property and down the small road. I heard sirens not long after, but I suppose I should tell you about the big one who made me quit that job. I have a tendency to ramble, and like I said, I try not to think too much about this guy. It was another graveyard shift, another night of my life spent behind a cheap wooden counter. I was pissing my life away, but I was doing it for some money, so it was all good. And I was better off than most of the people who walked through those doors anyway. It was 2:20 a.m. or so. I remember staring at the clock in boredom, watching the 2 dots of the display tick on and off as it counted the seconds. That was when I heard the bell over the door, and I looked up to gauge the person who had just stepped into my little world. He was only a little over 5 feet tall and looked like he could be 50 years old easily. His skin was rough and saggy. His arms and legs were dotted all over with tiny white hairs, matched by equally white hair which hung down in long reams from his head. It was scraggly and matted together. You know how hair gets if you don't take a shower for like 2 days? This guy looked like he'd spent 2 weeks without the good graces of any shampoo. He slowly walked his way over to the counter, mechanically, like each step was a deliberate action. Finally, he made it over to me, and he thumped his hands onto the counter for support. His hands were crisscrossed with varicose veins. They looked like cracks in broken glass. Lines of black grit ran underneath the edges of his fingernails. He finally opened his mouth to speak and gave me a good view of his slimy yellow teeth. Disgusting, he asked in a croaky voice where our bathroom was, and I just pointed sternly toward the back corner of the room. There was a little hallway which held doors to the storage rooms and one small bathroom. He lumbered off in that general direction, and I silently thanked God that weirdo was out of my face. I heard the door click shut. Once again, I was by myself for the most part. The station was silent for 5 minutes, then 10, 15, It started to get weird how long this guy was taking in the bathroom. If this were a normal-looking guy, I wouldn't have questioned it, but the man in there was anything but normal. At the 20-minute mark, I journeyed out from behind my counter and toward the bathroom. I knocked on the door a couple times and asked if the guy needed any help. I heard him mumble from the other side that he was fine, but he didn't sound all that fine to me. I wasn't about to argue with him though, so I just walked back over to the counter and sat down in my chair. Another 10 minutes went by, and that guy still hadn't come out of the bathroom. I was getting agitated at that point. Eventually, I started hearing a noise. At first, I couldn't really tell what it was, but it didn't take long to figure it out. I was hearing moaning. I started walking back to the bathroom once again. This time, I could tell as I neared the door that something definitely wasn't right. It sounded like the man was in pain, maybe even afraid. Sheepishly, I knocked on the door once again, and for a while I didn't get a response, but eventually the man managed to choke out 2 simple words, "Help me." His moaning was getting louder and turning to yelling. I started hearing banging coming from inside the bathroom. I could even feel it shake the floor just a little. I went for the knob, but of course the man had locked himself into the bathroom and hadn't gotten around to actually trying unlock it. I was panicking a little. I didn't know if this was just a bad case of the runs or something like that, or if it was something more serious. I started to think that the latter was true, but there was a rancid stench that was beginning to make its way out of that damn bathroom. It could have just been some horrible diarrhea, I thought. I shuddered a little bit at that. I shouted at him to open the door. He had to unlock it if he wanted help, of course. But he wasn't listening to me. He had started babbling some incoherent nonsense about how he had to keep the door locked because he was only safe in that room. They were coming for him, he said. I kept shouting at him to unlock the door, but he was off on a horrible tangent about how they were coming for him, and how they had finally figured him out. All the while, his slurred speech was punctuated by cries for help. He just kept shouting for help. I kept hearing banging. I was freaked out, and in that moment I didn't figure I had the time to call the cops or anything like that. The man's speech was trailing off, and he sounded like he was in a very bad way. I'd like to say that I didn't freak out, that I knew what to do, and handled the situation in a respectable way. But I did none of that. I spent the next probably 5 minutes pacing in that little hallway, my hands pressed to my head in desperation while I tried to think of something, anything, to do. The man's yelling and flailing had stopped, I noticed, and I was desperate to do something. Finally, I was struck with inspiration. I went into the storage room next to me, and I grabbed a rolling dolly that we used to move some of the heavier crates around. Then I rushed back into the hallway, and with all the force I could muster, which must have been a lot thanks to adrenaline, I bashed the door wide open. The smell that hit me almost made me throw up right then and there. I dropped the rolling dolly and stumbled away from the room, gagging. I almost fell over, but I steadied myself on a wine shelf. I had to take a moment to catch myself, and it felt like I was going insane. It really struck me then that I needed outside help. So I did what any sensible person would have done a while back. I called the police. I assumed the worst. In the moment I saw the man, it had looked like he was certainly dead. He was sprawled out on the tile floor, half-heartedly resting against the wall. His back was slumped down, curving in the space between the wall and the floor. His knuckles were very bloody, and pockmarks in the wall, which were also licked with blood, made it fairly obvious he'd been punching around. It was obvious enough where the smell was coming from. That bastard was sitting in a putrid film of brown liquid. Yes, he'd shit himself. He wasn't even on the toilet, for Christ's sake. Hell, I was still on the line with the police, I did my best to describe the scene to them. As much as I really didn't want to know what had happened to that guy in the bathroom, I figured he could still need help. I announced to the operator that I was going back in. I held out hope that he was alive, but feared otherwise. I guess I really went back into that hallway just out of morbid curiosity, more than anything else. I had to pull up my shirt and cover my face with it to keep the smell from overpowering me. It didn't do too much to help. The guy had a yellowish powder all around his nose and his mouth, as well as a little froth at the corners of his lips. His eyes were bloodshot and glazed over. I said to the operator that it looked like he'd overdosed on some drug. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to go outside for some fresh air. I was groggy and mortified and depressed. A man had just died next to me, for God's sake. At the most, I was out there for 5 minutes. I could already hear sirens when I stepped into the cool night breeze. Only 5 minutes. But here's the thing, here's what really messed me up bad. When the police arrived, they asked me to show them where the incident had occurred. An ambulance was there as well, and the paramedics were getting their equipment. I led them all to the back, and it still smelled horrible. There were still punch marks on the wall, and there was still some of that drug powder dusted around the floor. But the man who'd been laying there was gone. He was just gone, like he hadn't even been there. I don't mean he was gone in the sense that he got up and left. There weren't any boot prints, no streaks of liquid on the floor, no handprints on the walls. There was none of that. It was like he just vanished. I can't explain it. I don't want to know what happened that night. I quit a few days later. I couldn't keep going back there, not after all that. You know, the things that guy said keep replaying in my head, all those things about how they were coming for him. God help me. Story 2. Be careful what you wish for in gas station bathrooms. It might just come true. I know how this sounds. That title alone is sketchy, and I know what I'm about to tell you is going to sound absolutely off-the-wall bonkers, but I need you to hear me out. I don't think any of you are going to believe me, but I'm telling you right now, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Just give me a chance to explain myself. It all started with an argument. But that was normal for Rhett and Argument. Humiliated me, made me feel like an object, like I was just something that he could use and then toss when he was finished. I thought back to the interaction we had 5 minutes ago, the way he didn't even hesitate to slap me. I punched the number into my phone, gripping it tightly, my hands shaking as I waited for an answer. I knew exactly what I was going to wish for, the words fighting to push past my lips. I just didn't know how I wanted to word them. The second the phone was answered, though, I paused, a whisper floating over the line. Wish you may, wish you might. Call this number and wish things right. The fluorescent lighting of the bathroom flickered for a moment as a chill settled over my body, goosebumps crawling up my arms. I wish that Rhett Kellers would... My voice wavered as I fought to grit out the words between clenched teeth, my anger simmering dangerously close to rage. I wish he would... Frustration bubbled up and overflowed as I punched the stall door and screamed into the receiver. I wish he would freaking trip over a fork and die or something. My voice rang out harshly, echoing off of the grimy bathroom walls and spiraling all around me. The moment everything went quiet, my chest heaving as I fought to control my breaths, I noticed the light above my head flicker again. A crackle sounded over the phone, my hands fumbling to hold it closer to my ear. I waited for only a second before I heard it. Wish granted. And then the call disconnected. I pulled the phone away from my face, took a deep breath and leaned up against the stall. I knew that it was probably just some stupid, fake, pre-recorded message or something, but now that I'd gotten that off my chest, I did feel a lot better. With a turn of my heel, I reached to unlock the door and froze. The number and the cryptic message were no longer there. In fact, the The door was perfectly clean and blue. What the... My mind was spinning, but I didn't have long to think about that before Rhett's name flashed up at me on my phone. My eyes darted to the time. 11:11 p.m. Shoot, I'd been in there for way too long. Fear coursed through me the second I scrambled to answer, an apology already dancing on the tip of my tongue. Rhett, I'm so... Hey, I came in to get some nachos and I realized I forgot my wallet at the party. Spencer said he would bring it to me tomorrow, but I need you to spot me a couple dollars. A sigh of relief blew past my lips as I shoved open the stall and walked towards the bathroom door. Sure, yeah, I can do that. The second I stepped out, I dug through my purse for a couple of dollars before heading over to Rhett. He was standing at the cheese machine, a heaping mountain of liquid gold glistening upon layers of chips. Hey! He turned, his finger pointing towards the packaged plastic utensils. Can you grab me one of those? This gas station cheese sticks to your fingers like cement. I handed him the money, nodded, and grabbed one of the packages. I started to unwrap it for him before he yanked it out of my hands and turned to head up to the cash register. Before he could make it, though, I froze, stunned, when he turned and slipped on a puddle on the floor. A bright, yellow, wet floor sign glared up at him as he slid, almost dropping his nachos in the process. He did, however, drop his utensils. I waited for a string of curses to fly from his lips before he stepped forward and tripped. Again. And once again, I stood there in stunned silence. This time, not because he tripped, but because of what he tripped over. Horrified, I watched the gruesome scene unfold before me, my eyes as wide as saucers and my brows raised. One of my hands flew up to cover my mouth. It was like it happened in slow motion. In one fell swoop, his foot tripped over the fork, catapulting it up into the air for a second, the prongs facing towards the sky, before Rhett landed on it with a loud, meaty thud. The second it pierced through the vein in his neck, it was a bloodbath. Crimson splattered up like a fountain before pooling around him. There was no way anyone would believe this. But then I remembered Aaron. Standing across from me, Aaron glanced at me and then at Rhett. Fear coursed through me as I watched Rhett choke and sputter before he finally laid still. That should have been impossible. What were the chances? Aaron was quick to rush to my aid, my legs suddenly feeling like jello. I'd never seen so much blood. The second he guided me to the office in the back and sat me down, I passed out cold. I don't know how long I was out, but I awoke to Aaron's voice gently coaxing me awake. Once I finally peeled open my eyes, I noticed that he was crouched down in front of me, but no matter what I did, I just couldn't rid my mind of the image of Rhett's blood seeping into the grout, staining it red. It wasn't until Aaron gently patted my leg and spoke that I'd realized it was all my fault. "Maddie," he said, his voice smooth as schwarz. My eyes met his warm brown ones, that horrible sinking feeling in my gut beginning to spread as thoughts ran around my head like a train, all of them flying off the tracks. I'd brought this upon him. I'd called that number. I'd made that wish. You know, he started, his voice breaking me from my hysteria. His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. It serves him right, really. My brows furrowed and my breathing stilled. "What do you mean?" "It's what you wished for, isn't it?" His eyes gleamed up at me mischievously. All of the comfort from before replaced with something much more sinister. Dread. I didn't mean... I stuttered. But I did, the number on the bathroom stall. The words I'd uttered in a fit of rage. The wish. Had he been the one to do that? And if so, how? "Don't worry about it," Aaron whispered. I've already taken care of everything. The blood's on my hands, not yours. Confusion clawed at me, twisting and curling around my mind until I was finally able to push what I'd been thinking past trembling lips. What? What did you do? He opened the office door, pointing towards the trash bag sitting just outside of it. Remember what he told you in the car? How would you act like a whore and you'll get treated like one? He paused. Does that ring a bell? Anger and embarrassment burned at my cheeks. I didn't know what to say. How he knew that was beyond me, but hearing it once was bad enough. Hearing it twice was like getting slapped all over again. Listen, Aaron started, hand coming up to cut my face. His thumb lightly brushed over my cheek, the same one that Rhett slapped, the skin angry and red. Act like trash, he whispered, the corners of his lips tugging up into a wicked grin. You'll get Story 3. Station left me a list of instructions to follow. Series when I arrived at the gas station for my first shift, the place looked quite normal. It was one of those standalone branded gas stations, named generic Star Gasoline, and clearly family-owned. It was a bit run down but serviceable, and only one car was currently pumping gas. The gas tanks were lit by a single yellow light that hung in the center, casting shadows in all four directions, like a compass dial. The actual convenience store part of the gas station was typical. The glass windows were plastered with sun-bleached advertisements for cigarettes, energy drinks, and a 2 hot dogs for 99 cents deal. The tinkle of a bell chimed when I pushed open the convenience store door, and I was met with the smell of slightly old hot dogs that had been sitting under a heat lamp all day. Looking over, I saw that there was no one at the counter, but a lady who looked like she was in her 50s waved at me from the back of the store as she was sweeping up. The store was a little larger than a typical gas station convenience store. The interior is what you would expect, except one thing. There was a clock and an old TV screen lined up on each side of the room, showing security camera footage of the gas pumps. It seemed unnecessary. In addition, the owners didn't aim the security cameras very well, and it was mostly casting footage of the ground in between the gas pumps and the store, instead of centering the gas pumps in the middle. "Hello, you must be Alex." I was taken out of my thoughts and looked forward. "I know that my husband originally interviewed you. We've been trying to find a person to do this night shift for months, and I dare say I'm getting too old to stay up that late. But you're young, so you'll be fine." She wiped her hands on her pants before reaching out her hand to shake mine. "I'm Anne. Nice to meet you. You can go ahead and set your things behind the counter, and I'll show you around real quick. I know you've already worked at a gas station before, so I won't bore you. We just needed someone who was good at following directions." The little lady moved quickly for someone her size. She seemed eager to get me started so that she could finally go home and enjoy a normal sleep schedule. "Cleaning supplies are back here in this closet. Mops and brooms are hung on the left. Bathroom is on the right. It's just a single toilet room." I peeked inside. The bathroom was just about what I expected a gas station bathroom to look like. The walls were all scratched up from druggies probably sketching their initials all over it, and the tiles had a nasty brown stain from years of use. But it smelled clean at least, like bleach. And there was hand soap, which wasn't always a guarantee whenever I used a gas station bathroom. "I'll give you a list later with the cleaning tasks and when to do it, since you'll be closing up." Finally, she led me back to the front, showed me how to use the cash register and the debit card machine, and we were just about done. She dug into her pockets and pulled out a pair of keys. "These are the keys to lock up, one for the front and one for the back door. Near your chair at the register there's a yellow list of the cleaning tasks. The most important one is the red sheet." She pointed at the bright red paper sitting next to the register. "Read that and learn it by heart. and you'll have no problems. Thanks, I'll take a read. Did you bring a good watch like I told you to? Yes, I did, though it looks like you have so many clocks in here. I feel like I don't really need this watch to tell the time. Oh no, you'll definitely need it. Trust me, you've got another, 15 minutes before your shift starts. Go sit down and start on some of those tasks and keep it with you for a few days. You'll know it by heart soon enough. I don't need it anymore. I learned quick. She picked up her bags from behind the counter and left. There was no customers anymore, and it was relatively quiet. It was almost 10 p.m. and by now there weren't even any cars passing by on the road outside in this small town. I gazed outside again at the lone gas station light flickering occasionally in the distance. The light illuminated long, stretching shadows of the gas pumps. All 4 shadows were cast in the same direction towards the convenience store, almost like they were crawling towards the building in parallel. I picked up the 2 instruction sheets. Both were laminated and printed on study cardstock, and a little grimy from use, probably because many employees had to refer to them often. The yellow sheet didn't seem all that interesting, just a lot of mundane tasks like mopping up and taking out the trash at the end of the night. The red sheet, however, had blocks of text on it. Welcome to Star Gas Station. This is your night shift employee manual. Please follow all instructions with great care. It is important that you are punctual and uphold the quality of service that our customers expect, even during the late night hours. We strive for peace and harmony with our neighbors night and day. A clean store with busy employees is a happy and occupied store. Spend most of your time being active in the lit part of the store, except when otherwise necessary. Half of the lights are always off. Before 10 p.m., turn off half of the store lights. It does not matter which half of the store that you keep lit, but whatever you choose, keep it for the rest of the night. If you turn off all of the lights, it makes the store look closed. You will need the unlit part of the store later. If you need to use the bathroom, keep the door cracked so that you can keep an eye on the security footage on the TV monitors. Throughout the night, you might notice puddles of water and heavy dust on the floor and table surfaces in various places. Try to clean them up when you can using the provided mops and dusters. Puddles and dust make the store look abandoned and unkempt and will attract attention. A clean store is a happy, occupied store. We recommend occasionally patrolling the store to look for water or dust that you might miss. Remember to check the employee break room around 12 a.m. or earlier. Prepare the mop bucket with water and soap. At 12:05 a.m. go to the back of the store to the refrigerated drinks aisle and mop the aisle continuously until 12:25 a.m. Do not leave this aisle or stop mopping until the specified time for any reason. You may feel something watching you and a strong desire to leave the aisle and hide. Do not listen to this urge, act normal, and do not show signs of fear. You may go back and forth down the aisle until time is up. Management recommends keeping your head down, keeping an eye on your watch, and wearing some headphones with music to help you block out sound. The quality of your mopping does not matter, but it is important that you appear busy at work. On the walls next to the cash register is a camera feed of the backlot that is different from the other camera feeds. You do not need to check this feed too frequently, only once every 30 minutes at the top and bottom of the hour. At any time of the night, if you see a shadowy figure standing in front of the camera feed and staring directly at you into the camera, calmly and slowly duck down under the register so that you no longer are able to this particular monitor screen. We call him Fred. Wait 5 minutes and use the provided compact mirror underneath the cash register to indirectly check if Fred is still there. If he is still there, continue checking every 5 minutes until he leaves. This one only happens if you are not acting busy enough or if the store is dirty. You may see Fred standing directly looking in at the front of the convenience store. If so, Stop what you are doing and do not acknowledge his presence, but calmly crouch behind any of the aisles in the unlit section and make noise by reorganizing and moving snack bags and drinks around. Do not stand up again. You want him to hear you, not see you. He will not want to bother you if you seem busy. You can peek through the shelves to see if he is still there, but be careful. Finally, these are the most important rules. We usually only have one local neighbor, Fred, visit every night. But on very rare, unlucky occasions, there are more of them. Unfortunately, only Fred is relatively harmless, as long as you follow the rules. The other foreign visitors are not. There are multiple TV monitors on all walls of the store. If at any time in the parking lot you see the 4 shadows of the gas pump all face towards you in the same direction, this is a bad omen. It means that out-of-town visitors are nearby and it is best to vacate. You will have a few minutes. Drop what you are doing, run to the employee back room and find a large light switch panel on the back wall. Turn off every switch to turn off all electricity to the store. It will make the store look closed and the visitors may leave to look for a different establishment. This angers Fred, who is a local, but helps discourage out-of-town visitors from coming in. Go into the storage room on the right, lock the door and deadbolt it. Put your phone on silent and send Anne a text. Do not try to leave. Multiple visitors may enter the store. Fred will also get inside now that the store seems closed, but he should not find you if you remain still. You can take a nap for the rest of the night as long as you do not snore. If all goes well, we will collect you in the morning and pay you triple your wages for the trouble. Ice ran through my fingers as I reread one line that stood out. In a panic, I looked up at the closest monitor, and the shadows were so elongated that they were basically leaking into the store. But there were no shadowy figures inside. Yet, I was starting to shake. No way that this list was real. But I clearly remembered the shadows being in a compass formation when I first arrived. The sun was already down, and unless that singular light fixture could somehow move positions, there's no way to explain the shadows suddenly changing to stand parallel to one another. Blood was draining from my face and I looked up the clock. It had taken me a while to read through the list, but maybe I had a minute left. Break room, back wall, panel, storage room, lock it and deadbolt. Call Anne, then stay silent. I sprinted from behind the counter and ran to the back room. I quickly located the light panel and smashed my hands down on all of the switches and blacked out the store. My hand fumbled for my phone flashlight while I grasped the walls to find the storage room door and pulled myself in. I couldn't see a thing except for the narrow beam of my phone flashlight, but I managed to lock and deadbolt the door with my jittery fingers, then located boxes that I could hide behind. My heart was pounding. I wasn't sure if all of this was a joke, but it couldn't hurt to call Anne and ask her what in the world was going on. I dialed her number and heard the dial tone of a phone call trying to get through. Ring, ring, ring. I hope she picks up. Ring, ring. It seemed to take forever. Hello? I couldn't believe she actually picked up. I immediately asked her if that red instruction sheet was real. In a slurry of panicked words, I also explained the shadows that all began facing the same direction towards the store and demanded to know if I was in actual danger. Sorry that I didn't tell you, honey. That last one almost never happens. It's only happened a couple of times in the past 2 years. You just got really unlucky. It seems like you did almost everything right, though. I breathed a sigh of relief. Just stay inside and stay quiet. We'll get you in the morning, sweetie. I was still in a panic, but this reassurance relaxed me enough to slump down the wall and get ready to settle in for the night. However, just as I was about to put the phone down, a thought bubbled up in my head. Did she say that I did almost everything right? I felt something next to me. The voice was now no longer coming from my cell phone, but right next to my ear. You were supposed to text her. If you're a fan of terrifying stories and mysteries, Don't miss the chance to join us on Dark Whispers. Discover chilling tales and immerse yourself in a world full of suspense and thrill. Subscribe now and become part of a community of mystery lovers. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be the first to catch our latest stories. The darkness has whispers. Are you ready to listen?